Look up at the night sky right now, pick any star, and ask yourself whether something out there ever looked back. That question has followed humans for thousands of years. And the answer, depending on who you ask, ranges from absolutely yes to a polite but firm no. What's strange is that the evidence people point to isn't just blurry photographs from the 1970s. It's carved stone, it's ancient text, it's massive structures that nobody fully agrees on how to explain. The ancient astronaut theory says that extraterrestrial beings visited Earth in deep antiquity, walked among early humans, and shaped everything from our architecture to our religions to our understanding of the cosmos itself. Millions of people believe some version of this, and the reasons why are more interesting than you might expect. It starts with a Swiss hotel manager named Erich von Däniken. In 1968, he published a book called Chariots of the Gods, and it sold over 60 million copies worldwide. His central argument was simple and provocative. Ancient humans were not capable of building what they built. The Great Pyramid at Giza, the stone heads of Easter Island, the geometric perfection of Pumapunku in Bolivia. He looked at these structures and said someone else had to be responsible, not because ancient people were stupid, because the precision involved seemed impossible without outside help. That idea landed in the public imagination like a lit match. It gets stranger when you realize the book came out the same year humans first reached the moon. The timing was everything. People were already looking up. The Nazca Lines are one of the most repeated pieces of evidence in this entire conversation. Etched into the desert floor of southern Peru, they stretch across roughly 19 square miles. The figures include birds, spiders, monkeys, and geometric shapes, some of them hundreds of meters long. They were made by the Nazca people between around 500 BC and 500 AD. And here's what makes them compelling to ancient astronaut believers. You cannot fully appreciate them from the ground. From ground level, they're just shallow trenches in the dirt. From the air, they become something else entirely. Von Däniken looked at the long, flat lines and said plainly that it looked like an airfield, a landing strip, built for something that flew. Archaeologists disagree. But the question of why you would build art that only makes sense from the sky remains genuinely interesting. The Antikythera Mechanism is harder to dismiss. Pulled from a shipwreck off the coast of Greece in 1901, it sat in a museum for decades before anyone understood what they were looking at. It is a bronze device built around the 2nd century BC, containing at least 30 interlocking gears, and it could predict astronomical events, track planetary cycles, and calculate the timing of solar eclipses with precision that would not be matched again until the 18th century. That is not a small gap. That is roughly 2,000 years of missing technology sitting in a wooden box. Scientists now believe it was built by Greek engineers using mathematical knowledge of the era. But the mechanism represents something real. Ancient civilizations occasionally produced things that seem wildly out of place in their time. The ancient texts are where things get genuinely complicated. Sumerian and Babylonian tablets, some dating back to the 2nd millennium BC, describe objects moving in the sky in ways that some researchers find hard to categorize as purely natural. An ancient Egyptian document, sometimes called the Tuli Papyrus, and dated tentatively to the reign of Thutmose III around 1600 BC, describes what the text calls circles of fire appearing in the sky, bright as the sun, very numerous, and dominating the sky for days before vanishing. Scholars debate whether the document is authentic and what its original language actually says. But Roman historian Livy recorded similar things. Phantom ships seen gleaming above Rome in 218 BC. Round shields observed over the ancient city of Arpi the following year. Whatever people were seeing, they were writing it down. The Dogū figurines from ancient Japan are another piece of the puzzle that believers return to constantly. These clay figures, some dating back 14,000 years, are among the oldest ceramic art ever produced, and they look, to some observers, unmistakably like figures in suits. Large goggle-like eyes, fitted garments, strange helmet-like structures around the head. Von Däniken pointed at them and said they were representations of actual visitors. Archaeologists argue they're stylized human figures connected to spiritual beliefs about fertility and healing. Both interpretations require some imagination. What isn't in dispute is that the figures are genuinely strange, and that nothing quite like them appears in the archaeological record of the same period anywhere else on Earth. The Egyptian connection runs deeper than just the pyramids. Pharaoh Akhenaten, who ruled in the 14th century BC, is one of the more unusual figures in all of ancient history. His portraits and carvings show a man with an elongated skull, an unusually long neck, wide hips, and a body shape that looks nothing like the other pharaohs depicted in Egyptian art. He also dismantled Egypt's entire religious pantheon and replaced it with the worship of a single sun disk. Ancient astronaut theorists have argued that Akhenaten's strange appearance and radical ideas came from somewhere outside the ordinary human experience. Mainstream historians point to genetic conditions like Marfan syndrome, or simply to artistic convention. But his reign remains one of the most debated in all of Egyptology. Here's where the scientific community draws a clear and firm line. Mainstream archaeology, genetics, and physics do not support the ancient astronaut hypothesis. Full stop. Mitochondrial DNA studies show clean evolutionary progression for Homo sapiens across roughly 300,000 years with no evidence of extraterrestrial genetic intervention at any point. The construction of the Great Pyramid has been documented in extraordinary detail, including an actual logbook kept by a supervisor named Merer that describes moving limestone blocks by barge from nearby quarries. A ramp and sled system discovered at Hatnub in the eastern Egyptian desert dates to the reign of Khufu himself. The pyramid was built by tens of thousands of human workers using ramps, levers, and organizational systems we can trace step by step. The aliens didn't build it, people did. Carl Sagan, who spent his entire career thinking seriously about whether intelligent life exists elsewhere in the universe, had a specific problem with ancient astronaut theories. He wrote that every case offered as compelling evidence had either a perfectly reasonable alternative explanation, had been misreported, or was an outright hoax. He believed deeply in the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence. He simply didn't believe the evidence for it was here, carved into desert floors or buried in shipwrecks. That distinction matters. Skepticism about ancient astronauts is not the same as skepticism about life beyond Earth. Scientists who reject von Däniken overwhelmingly believe the galaxy contains other intelligent species. They just think the argument for ancient contact hasn't produced real evidence. Critics have also pointed out something uncomfortable about the theory that rarely gets mentioned in the television documentaries. Ancient astronaut arguments tend to cluster around the monuments of non-European cultures. The pyramids of Egypt, the temples of South America, the stone heads of Easter Island. The implication, critics argue, is that those civilizations required outside help in a way that European ones supposedly didn't. Scholars of indigenous history have called this out directly. The same assumptions that led 19th century archaeologists to misattribute African and Asian ruins to mysterious vanished white civilizations are, in a different costume, operating inside ancient astronaut theories. The aliens become a substitute for the same old denial, that the people who actually lived in those places built what they built, and built it brilliantly, without assistance from anyone. What makes the ancient astronaut theory impossible to kill is not bad evidence. It's a real question wearing bad evidence as a costume. The real question is whether we are alone, and that question is legitimate, urgent, and still genuinely open. The Fermi paradox asks why, in a galaxy this large and this old, we haven't detected any sign of other intelligent life. The Drake equation suggests civilizations should exist in enormous numbers. The Webb telescope has now confirmed the presence of thousands of exoplanets in habitable zones. Something is out there. The statistical probability of Earth being the only location where intelligence ever emerged is vanishingly small. Scientists take this seriously. They just don't think the evidence for it lives in a temple in Bolivia or a hieroglyph in Abydos. The History Channel series Ancient Aliens premiered in 2009 and has now produced more than 200 episodes across 18 seasons. That is not nothing. Tens of millions of people have watched it. And while archaeologists and historians have been consistent in their criticism, calling the show pseudoscience presented as fact, the question it keeps circling back to refuses to go away. Did something happen in deep antiquity that our official story doesn't fully account for? Ancient humans looked at the same sky you're looking at right now. They built things that still stagger engineers today. They wrote about lights and shapes and descending objects that they did not have words to describe. Whether that adds up to alien contact or simply to the astonishing, endlessly surprising capacity of human beings, the argument isn't over. And honestly, given what's now circling in orbit above your head, it may be just getting started.